"I hope, my dear," Mr. Bennet said to his wife the next day, "that you are preparing a good dinner for this evening. I am expecting a guest." "Who is he?" Mrs. Bennet asked. "He is a gentleman and a stranger," Mr. Bennet responded. The ladies were surprised. "A month ago I received a letter from my cousin, Mr. Collins," Mr. Bennet explained. "After I die, this house will belong to him. By law, a woman could not inherit Mr. Bennet's property. He did not have sons, so, after his death, his property was going to his male cousin, Mr. Collins." In the evening, Mr. Collins arrived. He was a tall, heavy-looking young man, rather stupid and pretentious. He was a priest in the parish of a very rich woman, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. At dinner, he talked about his position and his friendship with Lady Catherine. Mr. Collins thought it was his duty to marry one of the Bennet sisters. First, he was planning to marry Jane. However, Mrs. Bennet told him that Jane was almost engaged already. Then Mr. Collins decided to marry Elizabeth. The next day, the Bennet sisters and Mr. Collins went to the town of Meryton. The youngest sisters wanted to see the officers that were staying there at the moment. In Meryton, they were introduced to Mr. Wickham. He was a very handsome, very attractive gentleman with excellent manners. As they talked, Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy came by. Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham clearly knew each other well and didn't like each other. Elizabeth was very surprised to see that. She wondered what that could mean. 5. The next day, the Bennets and Mr. Collins went to a dinner party. It turned out that Mr. Wickham was also there. When he entered the room, every woman looked at him. He sat by Elizabeth, and she thought that she was very lucky. To her surprise, soon Mr. Wickham started talking about Mr. Darcy. "How long has Mr. Darcy stayed in Mr. Bingley's house?" he asked. "About a month. I understand that Mr. Darcy has a very big house in Derbyshire," Elizabeth replied. "Yes, he is a very rich man. I can give you a lot of information about that. I have been connected with his family since childhood." Elizabeth looked at him. "You must be surprised, Miss Bennet," Mr. Wickham continued. "Yesterday, Mr. Darcy and I didn't say a word to each other. Tell me, do you know Mr. Darcy well?" "No, and I don't want to know him better," Elizabeth said. "I have spent 4 days in the same house with him, and I think that he is very unpleasant." "I have no right to give my opinion," Wickham replied. I have known him too long, but I wonder if he is going to stay here for much longer. I don't know, but I hope you will not leave us soon just because he is here. Oh, no, Wickham cried. If Mr. Darcy doesn't want to see me, he can go away. I don't care about him, but his father was my greatest friend. He was one of the best men that ever lived. However, the young Mr. Darcy is not as honorable as his father. Elizabeth listened with great interest. I was planning to be a priest, Mr. Wickham went on. Mr. Darcy's father wanted to leave me a large sum of money, but Mr. Darcy didn't like it. After his father died, I didn't get anything. No, cried Elizabeth. How could that be? Because of Mr. Darcy, Mr. Wickham responded. I was like a son to his father. Mr. Darcy has always hated me for it, so he stole my money. Elizabeth was shocked. Mr. Darcy wasn't just an unpleasant man then. He was an evil man. The next morning, she told Jane Mr. Wickham's story. Jane couldn't believe that Mr. Darcy was so terrible. There must be some misunderstanding between the two men, she suggested. Something we don't know. No man of honor could do such a thing. While they were talking, Mr. Bingley and his sisters came. They invited the Bennet family to a ball in their house. 6.